My name's Richard Rowley, and I'm here in Roswell today. It's the 16th of October, 2009, and we're going to do an oral history for James Bruin, who's been a long-time practitioner here in Roswell. Jim, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Well, you look good.
Well, thank you.
You look good.
I feel good, except for a few aches and pains.
Well, that kind of comes with the territory.
I think so. I think so.
Yeah. Tell me, Jim, have you lived in Roswell all your life, or did you come from somewhere else?
I always say not yet. It's the way I answer that. Okay. Not yet. No. I was born in Joplin, Missouri in 1926, and we moved out here in 1930 with my mother and father and the older sister. So I've been here since 1930 in Roswell.
So you're considered a native for sure then?
Semi-native, yeah.
Did you, and I assume then you attended school here in Roswell through grade school, high school?
Mm-hmm, right.
And where did you go to college?
University of Colorado at Boulder, Colorado.
And is that where you got your undergraduate degree?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of a degree did you get there, Jim?
Well, in those days, to go to law school, they didn't have to have a degree. So I went 2 years to arts and 1 year to business, and then 3 years to law, and I got 2 degrees, BS in business and LLB in law, going that route.
So you got your law degree from University of Colorado also?
Yes.
And that would have been in what year?
1952.
Were you single or married at that point?
Oh, I was single. Well, I'd met my to-be wife. She was a United Airlines stewardess, and she'd gone to university, but I didn't know her there, but I met her through a mutual friend in Denver, and we got married shortly after I graduated.
What prompted you to go to law school?
Well, you know, a lot of things you think you remember, but you're not sure. But I had an older sister that was one of the 3 legal secretaries for the Atwood Malone law firm, Colonel Atwood and Ross Malone. And when I got through school in the afternoon, I'd walk down to her office, and then I'd get a ride home. So I think that contact, I just early teenager, that I've always said was what kind of prompted me to want to be a lawyer, and I never changed my mind.
Did you have any lawyers in your family?
No.
Okay, so
matter of fact, I was the first to go to college.
Now, were you in the military?
A couple of years. I graduated from high school in 1944, and I had enlisted in the U.S. Army Air Corps when I was 17, so I got to finish high school. And then I went in a month or about, I think, June of 1944. I was in for 2 years.
Where were you stationed during that time?
Oh, gosh, about 6 different places, all in the U.S. We didn't get to go overseas. We were about ready to go overseas when they dropped the bombs on Japan. So that ended that, but I was a right side gunner on a B-29.
Oh, okay.
We had a crew. Mm-hmm.
Okay, because you weren't ever in Clovis, I guess. I know there were B-29s.
No, I was in Amarillo, and Lincoln, and Denver, and Tucson, Fort Myers, Florida, about 6 different places.
So after you got out of the military, then is that when you then went on to college?
Yeah. I got out like in August and went to college in September.
Then when you got out of college, got out of law school, did you come right back to Roswell?
Well, I got married, and we, honeymooned, etc. Did a little bit of moving around. But then I came back to Roswell and joined up with Truman Sanders, who had been here probably 6 or 8 years, older fella, not at that time real old, but I joined him as an associate.
Now, when you went to work with Truman Sanders, was it just the two of you in the firm?
Right, uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
And then I know over a period of time the firm has grown. I don't even know whether you know how many people you've got in this firm today that
well, if you let me use my fingers, I can figure out. I think we have 12 who actually practice, and then Chuck Hall is of counsel, and I'm retired, have been for several years. So I think we have 14, counting the two of us.
Now, was Bobby Baldock in your firm for a period of time?
He was. Bob came with us in 1962 or 63, and then he got appointed to the federal bench by President Reagan in 1982, I think it was. And so he left the firm. And then Chuck Hall, who's still with us, he came in about 1974. And then from there, Mike Worley in early 80s, and I couldn't tell you when each one of them came with us, but we just hired 2 this year.
What did you have your practice? Did you concentrate in any particular area or areas of practice?
No, in a town our size, you did just a little bit of everything. Didn't do a lot of trial work, some, and we did some insurance defense work and divorces and wills and trusts, and ended up doing quite a bit of foreclosure work after the base closed in 1966, I think it was. We had an awful lot of foreclosures.
No, that's when Walker Air Force Base.
Yeah, Walker Air Force Base.
Okay, okay. Did you, and I'm kind of working off of my memory because you and I have known each other for a good number of years. Weren't you in the legislature for a period of time?
Yes, I was in the state senate from 1967 through 1972.
5 years of it.
6, I think.
6 years?
Mm-hmm.
Is that about all you could stand?
Well, they redistricted my district, and I had run originally in the northern half of Chaves County. And then in about 70, I think, or 71, my district was put into with all of Roosevelt County. So I had to run in Roosevelt County and about a little part of Chaves County. And I was defeated by a Democrat, Wood, Bill. His name was Wood. He was a banker in Portales. And he had ended my career through 1972. I was out at the end of 1972.
Do you miss that at all?
Oh, it was a good experience. It was a very good experience. I am amazed at the amount of time and work that the current senators and representatives do compared to our time. We just met the 30 days, odd years, I guess, or even, and 60 in the other. Very, very rarely, and I don't recall hardly ever having to go any other time for a committee meeting or whatever. And we got a per diem of $20 a day, and we
that got you by in Santa Fe.
Yeah. In those days, the lobbyists, they'd take us out practically every night for dinner, and had an apartment. My wife came up some, and but now those guys, they have committee meetings all the time and special sessions. I don't recall ever having a special session, but it was pretty laid back in my time.
So you could continue with your law practice without any problem back when you were in the legislature?
Yeah, we usually, for the first 3, 4, 5 weeks, we would adjourn around noon on Thursday, and I'd come home, work Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then drive back Sunday afternoon. and keep up relatively well with the business. We had, well, let's see, we had Baldock in those days. So we had two here that took care of anything I couldn't get around to, but I kept up pretty well.
Well, that's good. Must have been a good experience. I'm not sure how $20 a day would do much for you.
Well, I think they get now 100 and some odd, whatever the IRS allows for the deductible expense account.
Right.
But I didn't starve, and we always had something to do.
Well, that's good. And of course, you had partners that could kind of carry on for you while you were gone.
And we had an apartment. I think that cost $130 a month, which was practically nothing now. But I didn't spend a lot of my own money.
Now I know, back years ago when you and I were on the Board of Bar Commissioners together, and you were on the Board of Bar Commissioners for a number of years. Do you recall how many years you were on that board?
Well, I was a commissioner from this district for 6 years, and then I was the senior lawyer division representative for 2 years. So altogether it was 8 years.
Well, I know that weren't you there? Were you there when all the work was going on trying to build the new bar center and that was?
No, that was later. The bar center was later.
Okay.
I think.
Okay. Well, I knew that you were on the Board of Bar Commissioners the same time I was, which had been a long time ago.
Yeah.
And what kind of an experience was that for you?
Another good experience. I really enjoyed that. We had a great bunch of people to work with, both men and women. We had good leadership in the executive, and I think we did some worthwhile things. The bar center was. Do you remember when the bar center was built? I can't remember. It seemed like I remember going to some meetings there, but I don't remember.
I'm thinking that it was along in the late '80s, maybe something like that, when that bar center was built, and that's just kind of working off of memory. And
I don't remember the years that I was on the bar, but we must have been built during some of that time, because I do remember meeting in the bar center.
Right. Well, I know it was a real pleasure for me to have you on the Board of Bar Commissioners, because everybody kind of looked up to you like the sage with all the sound advice, and when anything came up, I know the comments used to be, and you probably weren't within earshot, but well, let's find out what Jim Bruin thinks, because he'll have a good idea, and we know he won't get carried away. And
yeah, well, that's a nice compliment. I guess I probably was the oldest at that time.
I think you were, and I always wondered why you didn't try to progress through the chairs. And
well, I've regretted that I didn't, but during that time I just wasn't ready to make the commitment to be the president. And I should have, because I was age-wise and time-wise could have made it.
I think
but I just didn't opt to do it.
I think you would have been a shoo-in.
Well, I probably, and I would have enjoyed it, because I enjoyed the bar work.
Now, have you? When did you actually officially retire? Are you actually officially retired now?
Yes, after 50 years. I retired in 2003, and felt like that was plenty of practice time. I still have an office, and I have a secretary, and I come in an hour or so a day, and don't do any legal work, but just kind of keep up with the younger people. And occasionally, some of them even ask me a question.
Well, that's good.
And I make up an answer for them.
Well, are you inactive now, or have you just?
I took inactive status as a lawyer.
So you don't have to keep up with the continuing education.
No, I was kind of glad to get that over with.
Tell me, Jim, when you talk about all the years you practiced law, 50 years, Can you tell me one or two instances of things that you got involved in that were really things that you think about from time to time, that either cases you were involved in or situations you were involved in that really demanded your attention, or that you thought maybe where you made some kind of a significant contribution to either your community or?
Yeah, I'd be hard pressed to come up with anything. I do remember we were having a state bar meeting here the day that President Kennedy was shot, because I'd been at the meeting and I went back to my office, and by the time I got back to the meeting, well, the news was out that he'd been shot. But I do, and when I started, and this has probably been true later on, each lawyer was assigned on a rotating basis to a defendant that couldn't pay. And I remember I had a couple of jury cases, and I remember one very distinctly. This kid had been charged with breaking in to a house that was owned by people that I'd known for a long, long time. The jury found him guilty, and as we stood up to leave, he says, "Well, I guess we'll have to throw a writ of habeas corpus at him." I had to stop and think, now let's see what that is, you know. But I remember one case we had where we represented a young fellow that had been hit with a golf ball by a fellow that was behind him, and Ross Malone, the famous Ross Malone, was on the other side. Truman Sanders and I represented the young man, and wasn't a very significant judgment. We got about $10,000, and the kid got through life pretty good. But a few like that. I think I remember one where nowadays people would get these huge judgments, and they usually have them on a contingent fee basis. The daughter of a friend of mine was killed in a commercial airline crash, and they didn't think about filing a suit until almost the statute of limitations had run. Well, we were able to get the suit filed, and actually I think we filed it in California, and the airline paid about $500,000. And instead of a contingent fee, I think I charged on a time basis maybe $1,500 or $2,000, which has been quite below a contingent fee basis. But through the years we've had cases, but most of my practice was more office and that sort of thing instead of the trial work.
Transaction.
Baldock was a good trial lawyer, and he liked trial work, so he kind of took over more so than I.
I've had some experiences with Bobby Baldock back many years ago, and he was a lot of fun to try a case with.
Yeah, well, as you know, he's now a federal circuit court judge, so he got up pretty high and doing a wonderful job. Still lives here in Roswell.
I thought he maintained an office here. Yeah. Well, if you got somebody a $500,000 recovery and charged $1,500 to $2,000, any plaintiff's lawyer today heard about that, they'd think you'd lost your mind.
Well, they'd probably kick me out. Well, I remember, it wasn't our case, but a guy down in Hobbs got a verdict for $150,000, and the defendant was drunk, driving and killed somebody. I can't remember the exact facts, but everybody thought he was a hero to get a $150,000 judgment. So, times change.
Times have changed.
I do remember, too, we got a very substantial fee one time when we had a probate that was about $4 million. But that was probably the highest fee I remember getting.
Well, it sounds like you've had a lot of diverse experiences, and you've handled things in a lot of different areas of the law.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Did you do a lot of real estate work from here down here?
Yes, real estate. We represented a couple of title companies and represented a savings and loan, Pioneer Bank, Pioneer Savings and Trust, I think it was in those days. Now it's Pioneer Bank and another bank. So I've had a pretty general business.
Well, you would have then. You're of the age where you would have examined abstracts back
Oh
then.
yeah, a ton of them.
You know, of course, I've done a lot of that. My dad did that, and so on. But the title insurance thing sure changed things in that area. It took that part of the practice away.
Well, we still had abstracts on ranches and farms. Sometimes they had title insurance, but the ranches particularly, we had abstracts. I didn't do hardly any oil and gas work, but they had abstracts for those.
Well, that's true, because I know the title policies won't tell you anything about what minerals you own, and the only way you're going to find out is with an abstract.
That's true.
You don't do any of that kind of work anymore?
No. Actually, that work sort of quit several years ago because the title companies quit using lawyers, at least here, and they just basically did their own title work and wrote a title policy, and that was it.
Did you enjoy doing that kind of
work? I did. It was interesting to see some of the old titles and who owned the house and so forth.
You get to see a lot of history with that.
Oh, yeah, an awful lot.
That's well, tell me, what do you do to kind of occupy your time now that you're quote-unquote retired?
Good question. Well, I'm active as a director of the Roswell Symphony Orchestra. That takes a little time. As I should exercise, but I think about exercising a lot. But I have a nice dog that I walk a couple of times every so often. But
I know your wife Alice passed away.
Yeah, she passed
ago.
Passed away about 2 years ago, and that quite a change for me.
That was a sad event. She was a classy lady.
Well,
I always thought a lot of Alice, and I know my wife did. Do you have kids?
I have a son that lives in Denver and a daughter that lives in Albuquerque, both single, so I don't have any grandkids. And I really, I do a little paperwork trying to get my estate in order in case I should go on ahead, and the kids won't have much to worry about. I spend a lot of time, doing that. I always say I don't do anything, and I can't get that done. So,
Are either one of your kids lawyers?
Our daughter went to the UNM Law School, and she practiced about 1 year in Washington D.C. and she's worked in government mainly. She worked for Manuel Lujan when he was in the Congress on his committees. She worked with the U.S. Attorney General, is that the correct name, in D.C. Mm-hmm. She was there, and then she was executive director of the Public Utilities Commission in Pennsylvania for about 5 years. And she just kind of, a lot of pressure, so she moved back to Albuquerque about 6 years ago. And she doesn't practice. She's taken inactive status too. Our son works for the Department of Labor in Denver in the mine safety and health. So and like I say, they're both single, so we won't be having any grandchildren.
Well, that's too bad, but it sounds to me like you've stayed pretty busy. I've often wondered, I want to ask you about the Roswell Symphony. How in the world does Roswell end up with the symphony orchestra? Now, if you're on their board, you ought to be able to tell.
Hard work. This is the 50th anniversary of the symphony, started by the choir director of the First Methodist Church. In the basement of the church is when they first got their orchestra together, and their first concert was like December of '59, and the musicians are mainly from out of town. We have excellent musicians. We've had 4 conductors, and it's just kept going. We've had some tough financial times, and right now is a tough time because some of the money we got was through the New Mexico Arts, and with the income for the state being way down, why that didn't come through this year. So we've had raffles and raffled off cars and cash and so forth. We've had the same conductor now for 36 years, and he also conducts the Bakersfield, California Symphony. So
what does he do? Shuttle back and forth?
Yes, he comes here 6 times a year. Comes in like Tuesday, and then they rehearse, and then they play usually Saturday night or Sunday afternoon, and he's been excellent for us. We've
so he just rehearses them
about
2 or 3 times before each concert?
Yeah. These are professional people. Well, they're college professors, and some come over from the Lubbock Symphony and some from the Albuquerque Symphony and Eastern New Mexico. So I can think of 2 local musicians that have been with us for a long time. They're from here. And one interesting thing, we had a young man that was in the 8th grade when the symphony started, played the violin, and he's still with the orchestra.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So he's been here 50 years.
He'll be ready to retire before
Well, he actually lives in Hereford, but he comes over every time. I think that's fantastic.
It just amazes me because I've always thought that putting something like that together and keeping it together where you've got that many people involved, and especially you got musicians from coming all different places, would be such a nightmare of a job, just kind of getting your arms around it and being able to keep it together.
We've had good executive directors that work full-time. Of course, the board has the overall supervision, but we've had some very good executives that do all the lining up of the music and the musicians and all that sort of thing. So, and the conductor, of course, he selects selections and so forth. But it runs pretty smooth. We could use 200-300 more people come to the concerts, but matter of fact, you ever heard of Michael Martin Murphy?
Oh, yeah.
He came last year, and he's coming again this year. And that really packs them in. They buy single tickets for that. So he's an excellent entertainer.
He is. I've seen him before, and he puts on quite a show.
Yeah, and we've had some very good, very outstanding soloists, guest artists that have really been good.
Well, I know every now and then I'll see something in the newspaper or something that advertises a concert that you've got coming up, and I've always been impressed that it looks to me like you really have good quality programs that require top-notch musicians to pull it off.
Well, 50 years, that I don't know where the last 50 years have gone, but I haven't been on the board that long, but I have been on the board quite a while. And my wife Alice had been on, and we have what they call the Symphony Guild, which are the women, and they do a lot of work too. They've put out 2 cookbooks, so I forget them, Symphony something, that have been made some money for us, and publicity. So there's a lot of people that have spent a lot of time keeping it together.
Well, for a community the size of Roswell, I think you ought to be real proud that you could pull that off and keep it going.
Well, it's been a labor of love. Let's say I've enjoyed it, and I enjoy the symphony music. I also like Dixieland, but
right.
You can tell I'm not a long-haired musician, but I enjoy it. It's
that's good. That's good. Do you play any musical instruments yourself?
Oh, when I was in about the 8th grade, I played the trumpet, but not very well, and I gave that up.
Okay. Well, now you said you come into the office here basically every day or a couple of times, 3 times a week?
Every day. Usually, like I say, I have this dog, and I come down here with him, check the mail, see if I have any phone calls, just kind of walk around and say hello to everybody. And the dog, there's 2 or 3 of the girls that keep bones for him, and of course it's a treat. It's a treat for him to come down. So that's about the extent of it. I'm here probably an hour, maybe.
Let me ask you this: and I know since you've practiced for 50 years before you retired, that you saw a lot of different changes in how law was practiced back from the early stages of your career up to the latter stages of your career, and what you even observe today. Mm-hmm. Do you think? What do you notice the biggest changes, and do you think they've been for the better or for the worse?
Well, that'd be really kind of hard to answer, but when I started here in Roswell, I think we had about 15 lawyers, and now we must have 105, 110. There was probably maybe 2,000 in the state, or 1,000. Now we've got 6,500. It's gotten to be more like a business than it used to be. I got in it because I liked helping people, and like I say, we nowadays you've got all these big jury verdicts of multi-million dollars, $44 million just the other day in Albuquerque, and I think it's cutthroat's not a nice word, but there's so many lawyers. I think it's much less compatible between lawyers than it used to be. You used to know every lawyer by name and knew his wife and kids and saw them all the time. But now I don't know all the lawyers in Roswell. A lot of them are public defenders, district attorney assistants, and so forth. But I just think that the magnitude of it has grown quite a bit, and it's strictly a business. People just charge more and get more, and that's I don't object to that. Right. But it really has kind of taken the personalities out of the business to a certain extent.
Well, it seemed to me that, when you're practicing law and you knew the lawyers, you could get on the telephone and agree on something, and you didn't worry about somebody misinterpreting or maybe not remembering just exactly.
Yeah.
But it seems to me that in this day and age, and maybe it's because you don't know the people as well, but you just can't rely on the old handshake or, I'll do this over the telephone like you used to.
That's very definitely part of it.
Yeah.
Well, you've practiced quite a long while. How long have you practiced?
Well, this is 46 years for me. Well, so,
you got a few
we're all
more.
getting a little longer in the tooth, as I like to say.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Do you fool with the computers at all?
Well, I wish you hadn't asked me that. I don't know how to use the computer. As a matter of fact, I used to be a pretty good typist. I don't think now that I can type, because I've had a secretary for 50 years plus, and I've been thinking about trying to find me a typing refresher book of some kind, see if I can get back to typing. We have a computer at home, and of course many of them here in the office, but I don't use the computer.
You don't email with your kids or anything?
No. I have the secretary. Alice did when she was living, and my secretary, I use her email, and people email me through her. And our daughter has it. Well, the son and daughter both are very good with the computers. But I've not gotten into that. Don't tell anybody, though.
No, I wouldn't breathe this word to a soul.
I appreciate that.
Let me ask you this, Jim. Like you've talked, the practice of law has changed a lot over the years. If some young person came to you today and said, Mr. Bruin, you think maybe law school would be something I ought to consider be a good career, would you be inclined to steer them that way or steer them in a different direction?
No, I definitely would steer them toward being a lawyer. I think it's an honorable profession, a much-needed profession. I think they would enjoy helping people, which lawyers basically do. So I definitely would encourage them to go to law school.
Okay. Anybody going to watch in this video, have you got any words of wisdom for them as far as once they get out of law school, whether they ought to try to go into private practice, go to work in a DA's office, public defender, the government? Any thoughts on that?
To me, I had a chance originally to go to work for a company. And matter of fact, they offered me $275 a month. Pretty big pay, you know. And Truman, in the practice, offered me $250. And I thought about it for a long time, and I decided that I probably never would be satisfied if I didn't try the private practice. So that's what I did, and I've never regretted it. I kind of think my advice to them would be to get into the private practice. The corporation is pretty limited. District attorney, the public defenders, that might be some good experience if they want to start as a public defender. We have some guys here in the office that did that. Government, I'd say no. But bottom line, I think the private practice would be my advice.
Okay.
And even here in Roswell, we had a lot of lawyers, but I think there's spots, you always hear about some firm. Like I say, we just took on 2 new lawyers, one from Baylor and one from Texas Tech, and I know the other firms are hiring, so there's still spots for people. Now, you know, as a thought, you know, I was telling someone the other day, when I went through high school, I took Latin, because in those days they thought if you wanted to be a lawyer, you had to learn Latin. Well, I wish I'd taken Spanish. Instead, that Latin was, that's nothing.
You don't hear any of the Latin terms anymore, that's for sure. You know, you used to hear them years ago, and I'm sure you heard them in law school. I know I did.
Yeah.
But that seems to be a thing of the past.
Yeah,
so.
I wish I'd taken Spanish.
I noticed you got some library in here. Do your folks? I'm sure now they've got everything on disc, and you're really not buying books anymore.
No, we've phased out. I say we. I'm not involved in the buying or anything like management and whatnot. But we've phased out quite a few of the books. I think we still get the New Mexico Reporters, and maybe one other set of books. But it's most everything on the computer.
Well, I noticed looking over here on your shelf, you've got like the 41 statutes and the session laws that go clear back into the 1800s. I assume you had to inherit a lot of that from Truman Sanders.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure that old stuff was belonged to Truman.
Okay.
And, gosh, we've had some stuff we've just discarded, but none of the stuff going back that far.
Why did you quit practicing law?
Oh, I just kind of felt like that after 50 years, that was enough, and I didn't have any plans, but I just figured that it was getting to where it was pretty repetitive stuff. And it wasn't particularly exciting, whatnot. I had some nice clients, did a lot of work for this Pioneer Bank, but it just kind of seemed like to me that it was time to hang it up. My wife and I had always traveled quite a bit, but didn't necessarily quit for that reason. But it just seemed like it was time to move on.
I would think you'd had a hard time having your old-time clients getting them shuffled off to somebody else.
Well, it hasn't been a problem. Of course, a a lot of them pass on. But I've been able to, particularly the banks, it was easy to pass them on to someone else. And client calls and wants a will, why, it's easy to find somebody that can take care of that. But no, it was relatively easy.
Well, Jim, it's been real nice. I've thoroughly enjoyed this because, like I say, I know you and I spent a fair amount of time together back when we were on the Board of Bar Commissioners together. And
it was a good time.
We had some good times together, and I miss those times, and it's been a real pleasure being able to sit down and visit with you.
You. After you were on the Bar Commission, weren't you the head of a couple other organizations, Western Bar?
Yeah, I ended up. I got real involved with the Western States Bar Conference and ended up being president of that one year. And
we all figured you wanted to be in perpetuity a president of something, so we just let it go with that.
Well, I could tell you a story, but I won't put it on this.
No,
tape.
Okay, yeah. Well, thank you for coming down, and I enjoyed it too, and it's always good to see you.
Yeah, and we'll stay in touch.
Oh, you bet. Thank you. Thank
nice
you
to
very
see
much.
you. Thank you.
Okay.